All right, Tim Mitchell, just checking in with you. Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. Let's come to order and go on the record, please. I'm Charlotte Mitchell, Chair of the Utilities Commission, and with me this morning are the following commissioners. Commissioner Brown Bland. Please indicate your presence when I call your name.
I'm here.
Commissioner Gray.
Good morning.
Commissioner Clodfelter.
Yes, good morning.
Commissioner Duffley.
Good morning.
Commissioner Hughes.
Good morning.
And Commissioner McKissick.
Good morning.
All right, I now call for hearing docket number E-2 sub 1257 in the matter of the application of Duke Energy Progress for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct a solar generating facility in Buncombe County, North Carolina. Intervention and participation in this docket by the public staff is made and recognized pursuant to statute. On July 27th, 2020, DEP filed an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct the Woodfin solar generating facility in Buncombe County, along with the testimony and exhibits of Lawrence Watson. On August 6th, 2020, the Commission issued its order scheduling hearings, requiring the filing of testimony, establishing procedural guidelines, and requiring public notice. On August 14th, 2020, the Commission issued an order directing the public hearing to be held remotely and rescheduling the expert witness hearing and requiring a revised public notice. On September 21st, 2020, the Commission issued an order that the expert witness hearing would also be heard remotely. On October 6th, 2020, the public staff moved to cancel the public witness hearing due to the fact that no members of the public had registered to speak at the hearing that had been scheduled for October 8th. On October 7th, the Commission issued an order canceling the remote public witness hearing. On October 20th, 2020, the public staff filed the testimony of Jeff Thomas and filed Exhibit 1 to witness Thomas's testimony on October 21st. On October 27th, 2020, the public staff filed its consent to hold the expert witness hearing by remote means, and on October 29th, 2020, the company filed its consent to hold the expert witness hearing by remote means. On November 4th, 2020, the company and the public staff filed a list of potential cross-examination exhibits, and then on November 6th, 2020, the company filed its rebuttal testimony. That brings us to the hearing today. Pursuant to the State Ethics Act, I remind all members of the Commission of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time as to whether any member of the Commission has a known conflict of interest with respect to the matter coming before us this morning. All right, the record will reflect that no conflicts have been identified. So we will move forward with the proceeding, and I call on council to announce their appearances, beginning with the applicant.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell, Commissioners. Jack Jirac on behalf of Duke Energy Progress, LLC, and I'm joined by co-counsel who will now introduce themselves.
All right, good morning, Mr. Jirac.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. Robert Kaler appearing on behalf of Duke Energy Progress, LLC, and it's nice to see everybody on camera. It's been a while.
Good morning, Mr. Kaler. Good to see you too.
Good morning, Chair Mitchell, members of the Commission. This is Bo Summers, Deputy General Counsel, also on behalf of Duke Energy Progress.
Good morning, Mr. Summers. All right, public staff.
John Little with the Public Staff Legal Division.
Good morning, Mr. Little.
Good morning.
All right, before we begin, any preliminary matters that the Commission needs to take up before moving into the hearing?
No major procedural matters, Chair Mitchell. With your permission, we were planning on following the typical flow of the hearing. We'll present our witness on direct first, and then hear from public staff witness, and then have our rebuttal witnesses appear at after the conclusion of the.
Okay, Mr. Jirac, that is how we will proceed this morning, and I assume that. Mr. Jirac, that you all have a telephone line available for us to use in the event we have to get into any discussion of confidential information.
Yes, Chair Mitchell, we do. We've circulated that previously, and but glad to circulate it again if there's any commissioners or other parties that don't have that information.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Durack. I do believe we'll need that circulated. I have not seen it in my, I have not seen it yet this morning, so let's get that recirculated, just abundance of caution. All right, with
And
that,
Chair Mitchell, if I may, to whom should we send that email to make sure it gets to you and all the commissioners?
please send it to Kathy Lowell and she will get it circulated appropriately.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Durack, I'll be happy to work on that while you're putting the first witness out.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right,
Summers.
thanks, Mr. Summers. All right, let's go ahead and proceed then. Mr. Durack, the case is with you.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. At this time, DEP calls Lawrence Watson on direct testimony.
All right, Mr. Watson, I need to have you affirm, but let me see you on camera first. If you could just speak out, you will appear on my screen.
Good morning.
Oh, there you are. All right, Mr. Watson, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, you may proceed, Mr. Durack.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Mr. Watson, please state your full name and title for the record.
My name is Lawrence Watson. I'm the Director of Distributed Asset Commercial Development.
Thank you. Mr. Watson, did you prepare and cause to be filed in this proceeding pre-filed direct testimony in question and answer format?
Yes.
And do you have any changes that you need to make to your pre-filed direct testimony at this time?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions contained in your testimony today, would your answers remain the same?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Mitchell, at this time, I would request that the pre-filed direct testimony of Lawrence Watson be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand.
All right, Mr. Durack, hearing no objection to your motion, the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Lawrence Watson, consisting of 12 pages, filed on July 27th, 2020, will be copied into the record as if delivered orally from the stand and received into evidence.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Watson, did you also prepare and cause to be filed in this proceeding that certain application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct the Woodfin solar generating facility along with the supporting exhibits for that application?
Yes.
Chair Mitchell, once again, at this time, I would also move that the application and the supporting exhibits for the application be entered into the record.
All right, Mr. Durack, hearing no objection to your motion, it is allowed.
Thank you very much. And Chair Mitchell, with your permission at this time, I would ask that the witness now proceed with a summary of his direct testimony.
All right, Mr. Watson, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners. As the Commission is well aware, the Woodfin Solar Project is one piece of the Western Carolinas Modernization Project, or WCMP, which was approved by the Commission in 2016. The WCMP is a comprehensive plan to retire the 1960s era Asheville coal units and replace them with a combination of new natural gas generation, at least 15 megawatts of new solar generation and 5 megawatts of new battery storage in the Asheville area, and to establish a collaborative community effort to delay or implement the need for additional contingent new combustion turbine unit through innovative and aggressive energy efficiency and demand-side management efforts. The company plan received substantial public and community support, and with some modification was approved by the Commission as required by the Public Convenience and Necessity. The Commission's order approving the WCMP specifically commended DEP for its collaborative community efforts and expressly directed the siting of at least 15 megawatts of solar and 5 megawatts of storage in the Asheville region. The Woodfin Solar Project presented for Commission approval in this proceeding continues the collaborative nature of the WCMP through a partnership with Buncombe County to allow DEP to construct the solar project on a closed landfill. This partnership with Buncombe County is absolutely consistent with the intent of the WCMP and has garnered immense public support. While I, along with my colleague Todd Beaver, will address the economics of the project in more detail on rebuttal, I will note at this time that the company has taken steps to ensure that the capital cost of the project is reasonable and cost effective. And we disagree with the approach that public staff has taken in assessing whether this project is in the public interest. In conclusion, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners, DEP is proud of this project and believes that this unique partnership with Buncombe County is a nearly perfect manifestation of the intent behind the WCMP as approved by the Commission, which is reflected in the scores of supportive letters filed in this docket from a wide range of individuals, groups, and governmental organizations. Because the project fulfills the Commission's vision in its WCMP order and does so at a prudent cost, the Commission should find the Woodfin Solar Project to be in the public interest and grant the company's request for a certificate of public convenience and necessity.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Chair Mitchell, at this time, the witness is available for cross-examination.
All right, Mr. Little, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Watson. We're here today for this project, as this project is an outgrowth of the WCMP line of cases, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the WCMP order says does it say to build this specific project, or does it say build a certain amount of solar generation?
I believe the WCMP order stated that we would file 15 megawatts as expeditiously as possible to support the WCMP.
And in your testimony, is the company relying solely on the WCMP order as authority to build this project?
Do you mind restating the question?
Sure. Is the WCMP order the only reason this project is being constructed?
We did file this project to comply with the WCMP order.
And in that order, the Commission says to also file the instant CPCN file. Okay. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this facility is being built on a landfill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the landfill has a cap to keep rainwater and surface water from penetrating down to what's buried underneath. And is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that cap can't be penetrated to allow water to penetrate. So you have to build on top of the cap. And does that raise the cost of the project?
It is correct that we cannot penetrate the cap of the landfill, and so that has been accommodated within the plans for the project. There is a slight premium to place a solar facility on top of a landfill since you cannot penetrate the cap. That is correct.
And you also say that, so the cost of the project, this is above the current avoidance cost rate, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And building on the landfill, is this a unique project for DEP?
I'm sorry, Counselor, you broke up there for a second.
I asked if building on a landfill was a unique project for DEP. Do you has DEP ever built on a landfill before?
So it is a unique project for DEP, and as I'm aware, we have not built a project of scale on a landfill previously within DEP.
Has any other Duke entity or affiliated Duke Energy Corporation had experience in this?
As I understand it, DEC built a testing facility at the Marshall Steam Station on top of a coal ash landfill previously. That was not a production facility, rather it was to test technology at that location.
Excuse me, Mr. Little, I apologize to interrupt. This is direct. Mr. Watson, if you wouldn't mind muting your, it's a little awkward, but if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone in between questions, we're getting a little bit of feedback when Mr. Little's asking questions. So thank you, Mr. Watson.
So with DEP, Mr. Watson, let's talk about the Marshall Steam solar facility. That was a test facility to build to gain experience building on a landfill?
As I understand it, that was a test facility to test different technologies, racking technology, as well as solar panels, not necessarily to build on a landfill. As I understand it, that was just space that was available to test this technology.
But it was still built on a landfill, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It was built on a coal ash landfill.
And in addition to the Woodfin solar facility, the WCMP order, I believe, makes mention of building a solar facility on a coal ash landfill at the Asheville combined cycle site. Is that correct?
I believe it said to build a facility at the at the Asheville plant site itself as part of that order.
Can you just, is that being constructed or is it in the planning stages? Could you just give us a brief synopsis?
Happy to. That project is under development at this point. We have filed an interconnection request for a project of approximately 9.5 megawatts. I think my testimony states that it's in the 8 to 10 megawatt range. That project cannot move forward until after all the work at the Asheville plant site is complete, including the demolition of the existing coal generating facility. And so we plan to file a CPCN soon after that, or soon when that work is ready to be constructed in the 2023-2024 timeframe.
Thank you. Just one last question. If the commission grants the CPCN certificate, who's going to pay for this facility? Will you recover through rates?
Yes, we would recover this project through rates.
All DEP ratepayers will be paying for this facility, not just ratepayers in the Asheville area.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. That's all the questions I have at this time.
Thank you.
All right, any redirect, Mr. Drack?
Just a few questions. Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Mr. Watson, just a couple quick items for you. You were asked some questions about the incremental costs of constructing utility scale solar resources on a landfill. Do you recall those questions from Mr. Little?
Yes.
Would you also agree that it's very challenging to find land suitable for utility scale solar development in the Asheville area?
Yes, it's extremely challenging to find land for solar.
And what about this site specifically makes the Woodfin solar site makes it particularly suitable for utility scale solar development?
This site has several advantages that's described in the testimony. The fact that the site is a single parcel on relatively flat buildable land is a plus. There is access to immediate interconnection at the location. There is existing controlled access to the facility. We have minimal environmental impacts, meaning minimal tree clearing, if any, no wetland impacts at this location, no sensitive environmental areas, and we have a favorable below market lease rate.
And with respect to the lease rate, would you agree that the below market lease rate certainly offsets to some degree, some of the incremental cost of having to build on landfill?
Yes.
And would you also agree that there are some qualitative benefits to the site to the extent that the company is able to partner with Buncombe County in this project?
Yes.
Okay. Now, briefly, there was a few questions at the very start of the cross from Mr. Little regarding the need for the project, and he asked a few questions regarding the basis for the project and the fact that this project flows from the Commission's directive in its WCMP order. Do you recall those series of questions?
Yes.
And do you also recall that the company's IRP, as required by statute, was attached to our application for this facility as well? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And is it also your understanding that the IRP itself shows the need for incremental solar additions to the company system in the coming years?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Those are all the redirect questions I have at this time.
All right, questions from the commission. I'll begin with Commissioner Brown-Bland,
I have no questions.
Commissioner Gray,
I have no questions.
Commissioner Clodfelter,
Thank you.
Commissioner Duffley.
The questions.
All right, Commissioner Hughes.
Wait to rebuttal. No questions.
Okay. And Commissioner McKissick.
No questions at this time.
All right, Mr. Watson, looks like you are relieved for the time being.
Thank you.
All right, we will now hear from the public staff. May I call your witness, Mr. Little?
Yes, Chair Mitchell, the public staff calls Jeff Thomas.
All right, Mr. Thomas, if you would, there you are. Let's get you affirmed. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Mr. Little, you may proceed.
Mr. Thomas, why don't you give us your full name and business address and position at the public staff for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Jeff Thomas. My business address is 430 North Salisbury Street in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm an engineer with the Public Staff Energy Division.
And on October 20th of this year, did you profile in this case direct testimony consisting of 24 pages?
I did.
And on October 21st, did you file an exhibit to your testimony titled Thomas Exhibit 1, consisting of a one-page response by Duke Energy Corporation to Public Staff Data Request 2-17?
I did.
And do you have any additions or changes to make to your pre-filed testimony?
Yes, I have one minor change on page 18 of my pre-filed testimony. Give me a moment to get there. It's footnote 11. And the last sentence of footnote 11 should read, in this case, recovery of the incremental portion of the cost of the facility through the REPS rider would not be appropriate, as DEP does not need or intend to use the RECs to satisfy any REPS requirements.
Is that the only correction you have?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you the same questions today as are in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Chair Mitchell, at this time I ask Mr. Thomas pre-filed direct testimony be copied into the record as is given orally from the stand and as exhibit be identified as pre-marked.
All right, hearing no objection, the pre-filed testimony of witness Thomas will be copied into the record as if delivered orally from the stand. I would note that there are confidential portions of his testimony and ask counsel to work with our court reporter to ensure that those confidential portions are redacted as appropriate. Mr. Jirac, I would also note, just for purposes of the record, that Mr. Watson's direct testimony has confidential information in it as well. So let's just make sure that information is treated appropriately in the transcript.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. We will do so.
Okay. And following through with witness Thomas, his pre-filed exhibit will be identified as marked when pre-filed.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Mr. Thomas is available for cross-examination.
All right. Mr. Drack, you may proceed.
I'll take over, Chair Mitchell.
Okay, Mr. Kaler, you may proceed.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Thomas, Bob Kaler, we've talked before, I believe. Did I recall that, do you have a recent addition? Or are you expecting addition to your family?
Yes, my son was born last Thursday, so.
Congratulations. I relate to you and to the commission that in the Harris rate case in 1988, my son was born, and it was during the hearing. That was 32 years ago. So congratulations there.
Thank you.
A few questions for you here, mainly about the public record. Do you, in the course of your duties and activities with the commission, with the public staff, in regard to things at the commission, do you look at consumer statements that have been filed in this document?
I do. I look at consumer statements that are filed in almost every case that I'm active on.
So are you current with the ones that have been filed just in the last couple of days in this docket?
Yes, I've reviewed the statements of position and the letters of support.
And so you would agree with me that there are at least over 180 individual letters of support for the project?
Yes, I would agree that there are quite a few letters of support in this docket for the project. I have to take those into account along with the consumer statements of position that I read in the general rate cases that also oppose rate increases. So I have to make sure I understand the public sentiment holistically.
And so did you see any letters that were opposed to this project in this docket?
I did not see any letters in this docket opposing the Woodfin facility.
And I'll relate to you that I went through, I think, all 180 of them, and I didn't see a single one that said they were opposed to it. Some of them seemed to question whether or not Duke was behind trying to reject the project. And do you have any idea how they got that understanding?
I do not.
So let's start first of all with the county. The county's actually sent 2 letters supporting the project. Is that correct?
Yes, they had additional comments filed following the filing of my testimony.
And the mayor of Asheville has filed a supporting letter?
That's correct.
And there have been supporting letters from the Western North Carolina Sierra Club?
Yes, and several others as well, yes.
And the letter from the Sierra Club indicated that person was speaking on behalf of all 12,000 members of the Sierra Club in Western North Carolina. Do you recall that?
I have to look at the specific language. Is it there in the subject to check? Yes, I would take your word for that.
And there was a very extensive letter in support filed by the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. Did you have a chance to look at that letter?
Yes, I have.
And there, you know, I have to be frank with you. I was happy to see the letter from the Duke Progress perspective because we don't very often get letters of support from the NCSEA. Do you have that letter available there?
Yes, I have it open in front of me if you'd like to discuss.
Well, you know, at the bottom of page 1, they indicate that the county has offered to not charge DEP for the lease, and it says it's no secret that the western portion of the state, particularly in the mountains, are much more difficult to site for a solar facility. Do you take issue with that statement?
No, I believe that's a fair summary of the rebuttal testimony and the option, I believe option 1 that the DEP presented.
In your summary, you basically recommend that the commission reject our application unless the company is able to adhere to the 3 options that you include in your summary. Is that correct?
Those are 3 options that I proposed, but you know, I think I stated in my testimony, I'm open to additional options, additional venues that might make this project more cost effective. And I also would point out that the Asheville site has not been finalized yet. And without knowing the final capacity that's available at that site, the Woodfin facility may not even be needed to meet the 15 megawatt target in the WCMP.
And one of your suggestions or your options would be to reduce the amount to be covered from ratepayers. That would imply that you're suggesting that the company should agree to some type of a cap. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. To simply not seek recovery of the incremental portion, and understand through the rebuttal testimony that DP indicated that was not a workable option, but it just simply highlighted my concerns with the significant premium this project would impose on DEP ratepayers.
And when you refer to the incremental portion, you're referring to the amount of the project over and above the avoided costs.
That's correct. The 25-year levelized avoided cost calculated using the sub 158 methodology and inputs.
And I believe that if you look back at the letter, I think from the NCSEA, I think they were not very impressed with your reliance on the avoided costs in that proceeding. Would that be an accurate representation of their position?
I think that's fair to say.
And then one of your other options would be to increase the amount that the county pays for the RECs produced by the facility, correct?
That's correct.
And then your third would be, you say that proposing the facility as a community solar facility consistent with NC 62-126.8. Do you really think that the community solar is an option here?
Based on the outpouring of community support for this project, yeah, I believe that community solar is a viable option. There seems to be significant support in the community, and I imagine that would translate to interest in subscribing to the output of this facility.
And are you familiar with other community solar projects in North Carolina?
It's been a while since I reviewed some of the other community solar projects, most of which are run by EMCs in North Carolina. So there are a significant number of those in operation, but it's been a while since I've reviewed those, as I was reviewing DEP and DC's application for a community solar program.
So you wouldn't be aware of the subscription rates of any of those projects, would you?
To my knowledge, subject to check, several of those were fully subscribed. I believe Blue Ridge EMC had a fully subscribed one. Roanoke EMC was either at or near subscription levels, but I'd have to look back at some of my comments I made during the community solar proceeding.
But they would be EMCs and not investor-owned utilities, correct?
Yes, those were EMC programs. Before HB 589, community solar wasn't a mandate for the utilities, and no investor-owned utility had proposed a community solar program.
And you talk about the excessive cost of this project over and above avoided costs. Without mentioning any numbers there, would you agree with me that if the commission were to approve this project as it's set forth now by the company, that the incremental cost to ratepayers in North Carolina throughout the DEP system would be about 2/100ths of a dollar? In other words, about 2 cents per month.
I know that in its application, DEP estimated the incremental cost of this facility to ratepayers would be 0.02% impact on rates. I don't know exactly what that constitutes in terms of dollars, but I think when we looked at this, we view rate increases in the context of everything that Duke is doing. As you know, I spent significant time opining on the costs of Duke Energy's grid improvement program. There are significant cost increases, and in my view, our position is that the cost increases imposed by Woodfin are unnecessary.
So if the commission were to adopt your recommendation to require the company only recover what you state would be the avoided costs, that would be an increase of about 1 penny per $100, would it not? 1 cent per month for ratepayers.
Subject to check, I'll accept your characterization, but I would also note that if the commission were to accept my recommendation, the power being produced and generated by the Woodfin facility would be at the system avoided cost, much like any PURPA facility or CPRE, competitive procurement of renewable energy solar facility. And I believe in that case, ratepayers would be indifferent to the energy from the Woodfin facility or from the Duke Energy Progress system. And I believe that without the premium, ratepayers are, like I said, indifferent, and those costs would displace other generation at system costs.
So to finalize there, in terms of the ratepayer that has a bill of $100 per month from DEP on the system, the difference between your proposal would be an increase of one penny per $100, and the company's position would be 2 pennies per $100. Does that sound appropriate there?
Based on my analysis, I think that sounds fair, subject to check. I'll accept the dollar amounts. I did not actually calculate those. I went off the percentage given by DEP. But like I said, Duke Energy Progress is making and planning significant projects and capital investments over the next 10 years. And I think that the public staff, we look at any increase to those rates, and we try to make sure that the ratepayers are not going to experience significant cost increases for unnecessary investments.
And did you also see the motion by the Southern Environmental Law Center attorney, Goodwin Thompson, representing Mountain True and Sierra Club, that in view of the public staff's position, which they were not aware of prior to the first public hearing on October 8th, that the commission now schedule another public hearing so that the citizens in Buncombe County could express their desire for this project to move forward? Are you aware of that motion?
I'm aware of that motion, yes.
And if the commission were to reschedule that hearing, would you want to be the one there addressing the public staff's position to those citizens in Buncombe County?
Yes, yeah, I would definitely support that hearing and would like to attend if I can.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and congratulations on your new addition. And that's all the questions I have for the company.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Little, any redirect for your witness?
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Thomas, to your knowledge, has any individual or entity petitioned the commission to intervene in this case?
To my knowledge, no. I believe the only things that have come through have been consumer statements of position.
And were there any registrations or requests by the public to testify at the previously scheduled public comment hearing, to the best of your knowledge?
No, there were not.
And was the public comment hearing in fact canceled because there was no registrations for the public to speak?
That's my understanding of why it was canceled, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Thomas, commission has a few questions for you, and I will begin before I call on my colleagues to see if they have anything additional for you. Do you know, sort of off the top of your head, the average cost of constructing a 5-megawatt solar facility in North Carolina in recent years, like over the past 24 months, for example?
In North Carolina specifically, I do know that I've looked, my main reference here in terms of installed cost is a Lawrence Berkeley National Lab report that looks at that. In terms of North Carolina specific 5-megawatt facilities, that data isn't really there, but North Carolina in general, those numbers are available in that Lawrence Berkeley Lab report. And I believe they are a bit lower than the Woodfin facility, but I'd have to double check the report data.
Okay, but in preparing your testimony for this proceeding or preparing for cross-examination, you didn't go back and look at numbers that are provided on the CPCN applications for 5-megawatt facilities that have been constructed?
So the CPCN applications that I've reviewed, a lot of those estimates are preliminary, and we don't always get fully completed numbers. And oftentimes those estimates are high level, and you can't really verify the accuracy of those necessarily.
Okay. Okay, well, I would like for you in a late filed exhibit to provide us with LBNL numbers, installed cost numbers, North Carolina. And to the extent that those numbers are broken down across regions or locations by location in North Carolina, please provide that.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay. All right. The lease that the company has entered into with Buncombe County, how does the cost per acre compare with similar solar leases across the state, to the extent that you're aware of that?
So DEP stated in their testimony that, and through discovery, that this the cost at the landfill site was below market rates. And while I don't have the actual lease rates for other facilities in the region, I take them at their word there that it is a competitive rate based upon the agreement between Buncombe County and Duke Energy Progress. I would note that there are other facilities in DEP West. According to my review of operating facilities and discovery, there are about 54 megawatts of solar, third-party owned solar operating in the DEP West region. I couldn't say for sure what those lease rates are, but all of those facilities are able to sell their power at the current avoided costs.
Okay, and so we've heard we've heard testimony from Duke that there have been discussions between the company and the county for reducing or eliminating the lease, the sort of the leasehold payments due under their arrangement. But is that new information to you?
That was discussed during the process of writing our testimony. We had several conference calls with Duke, and that was brought up as an option, and then kind of formalized in DEP's rebuttal, and then the comments from Buncombe County kind of in support of that notion. But based upon our analysis, that even the reduction of those lease payments would have a fairly minor effect on the substantial premium that this facility would be generating power at. And in addition, I just want to point out that the Buncombe County did put out this project for a request for proposals. Duke was one of 3 companies that bid in, the only regulated utility that bid in, and it was selected according to the Buncombe County's RFP summary. It was selected due to the favorable lease arrangement that they were able to work out. So, I think we consider that as Buncombe County clearly went with Duke, and so we were maybe a bit concerned that in negotiating those lease payments and the REC prices that Duke was, not fully accounting for the incremental cost of a facility.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, I've reviewed your testimony and the testimony of the company, and I need you to help me understand sort of where the premium comes from. I mean, the testimony of Duke is that the EPC and the sort of now land cost is taken out of this, or might be taken out of this deal. EPC is at market. Why the premium? Help me understand that. And please don't go into confidential information to the extent that you can respond without doing so.
Of course. So, so first of all, the premium is, as I've said before, the cost of the facility in terms of the levelized cost per megawatt hour compared to the avoided cost levelized over the life of the project. Much of that cost is coming from, the revenue requirement of the facility, the depreciation expense, and, and then there's also, operations and management, the operation costs, lease expenses, property taxes, all that plays into it, because while the construction costs might be, Duke claims that those construction costs are reasonable, but with a smaller size facility, you simply have fewer megawatt hours to spread them over. So I think that, generally all things being equal, the levelized cost of electricity from a smaller facility will tend to be higher than the levelized cost from a larger facility. And that's one of the reasons why I point at the Asheville solar facility that Duke has yet to propose. Before we know what the cost, that's already going to be a larger facility. Duke has stated it will be possibly between 9 and 10 megawatts. That's even without building on the proposed coal ash landfill. That's only on the cleared space. So the capacity may even be higher, but we won't know for sure what that capacity is. And if that facility is going to be 10 or more megawatts, the LCOE will by nature be smaller and the premium will be lower. And so I think that my concern here is that by building the Woodfin facility before we truly know it's necessary to meet the 15 megawatt WCMP target, we might be paying, DP ratepayers might be paying for a very expensive facility that was never truly necessary.
Okay, thank you for that response. Mr. Thomas, we've heard, in this proceeding, there has been some discussion of sort of the development of solar generating facilities in the southeastern portion of our state and the sort of the lack thereof in the western portion of our state. In other proceedings, we've heard testimony from the public staff and from the Duke operating utilities as operating companies, as well as from others, about the costs going forward to develop solar facilities in particularly the southeastern region of the state. When you look at the sort of the network issues going on there, I mean, is it fair to compare? Well, two questions really for you. Is it fair to sort of to come up with an average? Let me restate my question just so I'm clear. Should we consider sort of the geographic constraints across our state that exists now when we're evaluating sort of cost effectiveness of these facilities as we are asked to make these decisions? And so that's question number one. And then question number two is, going forward, I mean, should we expect that the cost of developing solar facilities in the southeastern portion of the state is going to look dramatically different than it has in the past due to the transmission constraints?
Sure. So I'll answer the first as best I can. So, I think that was some of the criticism that DEP and some of the interveners have said, that applying a system-wide avoided cost to the DEP West region is not fair. So I just want to preface it by first saying the 5 megawatt solar facility, that the Woodfin facility, is just one component of the existing solar that's already in that state. Like I said, there's already approximately 54 megawatts of third-party solar operating and selling under PURPA rates in the DP West region. So those facilities already exist and are generating power, and they were able to sell and remain financially viable at the avoided costs at that time. There's an additional 23 megawatts of solar, most of it rooftop, in the DP West region that's currently in the interconnection queue. Some of that, being rooftop solar, might even be supported by the HB 589 solar rebates, which are being recovered from all ratepayers through the REPS rider. So the Woodfin facility is not the only solar facility in the region, but it is the Duke utility one that they want to construct. And while I believe that the WCMP order has weighed in, the geographical considerations are important to consider, the fact is that this premium is still significant, and the public staff's position is that it's simply not. It's not worth it for DP ratepayers to pay this substantial premium when there's already solar in the region. There will be more solar in the region, and there are other options and venues for Duke to propose solar to meet the WCMP targets that do not consist of simply rate basing a 5 megawatt facility. The community solar option being one that I've already talked at length about. So I think that taking those geographic considerations into account, it's understandable that this facility might be producing power at some premium to avoided cost, but this significant premium is simply too high for the public staff to recommend approval. As to your second question about cost of solar in the region, particularly in the southeastern portion of the state, I think we've seen that some projects are being, are requiring significant transmission upgrades to install, and some of that has pushed those project costs quite high. I also would point at the CPRE. We just finished tranche 2 in the CPRE, and while most of that capacity is being added in the DEC region, there are still projects that are viable in the DEP region, and Duke Energy has released locational guidance in the CPRE program, and I believe there are as well more granular hosting capacity analysis that they are performing and plan to release to developers in order to help developers site solar in the southeastern portion of the state without triggering those large upgrades. So I think that there's still a significant runway for solar capacity to increase in the southeastern part of the state in DEP and DEC's region. just looking at the IRPs, the 2019 IRP update and the 2020 IRP update, there are significant quantities of solar that Duke expects will be added, and the transmission cost estimates that they're inputting for those resources are based on actual transmission costs and some estimates of those costs going forward. So I think, if you just cite the solar wherever you can get land, I imagine some of these costs are going to be high, but with the significant guidance that Duke has provided for locating those solar sites where there is capacity available, that Duke and likely third-party developers expect that those costs can be minimized.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thomas. That's helpful. I appreciate your response to those two questions. Just one follow-up, then I'll cede to Commissioner Brown-Bland. That you referenced 54 megawatts of solar, and I assume that's utility scale installed at this time in DEP West. Do you, and I think you said it was third-party solar. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, this is based on some discovery we did in the E-2 sub 1185, the Hot Springs microgrid docket, where they provided the third-party solar producers that were selling power under PURPA in that region, and there were approximately 54 megawatts of utility scale.
And do you know, Mr. Thomas, off the top of your head, sort of the avoided cost vintage, meaning are they selling at 2012 rates? Are they selling at 2014 rates?
I believe the majority of the
rates, maybe.
I believe the majority of those, subject to check, I think we're selling under the sub 136 or sub 140 rates.
Okay.
So certainly higher. I think that most of those had executed contracts in the 2014, 2015 timeframe.
And those, I assume those would be 15-year contracts as well.
Yes, several of them were 15 years.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Commissioner Brown-Bland, anything for Mr. Thomas?
No questions for Mr. Thomas.
All right. Commissioner Gray.
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Klinefelter?
I think yes. Mr. Thomas, I want to do a little hypothetical exercise. I'm not sure where it will end up, but let me try it out here. This facility is not a PURPA project, correct?
That's correct. This is not a PURPA.
And it's not a CPRE project, is it?
It is not.
It is one component of a large package of projects called the Western North Carolina Modernization Plan, right?
Yes, it's one component, but I would just, point out that the legislature passed HB 59 following the WCMP order, and that law completely restructured the way that solar energy would be procured in the state, and it really signaled a shift to push those solar costs below avoided costs, and I think we took that into account.
I understand, but this is part of the WCMP, right?
Yes.
And the WCMP proposed to replace certain generating assets with a portfolio of replacement generating assets. That's what its purpose was, right?
DEP proposed to replace the coal units with natural gas and a combination of DSM and energy efficiency as well as solar and storage.
So suppose, and this is the hypothetical exercise I want to think about. Suppose I were to undertake to try to compare the energy cost per megawatt hour of the collection of replacement assets with the energy cost per megawatt hour of the generation assets that are being replaced. And I wanted to compare them as a comprehensive plan for replacement against a group of assets or an asset that is being replaced. If I undertook that exercise, do you have an opinion about whether the addition of this component to the package that constitutes the plan would cause the per megawatt hour energy cost of the package to exceed the energy cost per megawatt hour of the assets that are being replaced?
Well, I think that, first of all, that analysis would be difficult to undertake because we still don't know the size or the cost of the solar facility that Duke intends to construct at the Asheville site. And in its proposal, Duke had said that if the Asheville site itself could not be 15 megawatts, it would be supplemented with rooftop, community solar, or other utility scale solar. So in this Woodfin facility, I do believe that we are sort of putting the cart before the horse here. We've already got the Hot Springs docket, which we approved based upon the additional benefits that it would be providing customers. But until that Asheville site, the final size is determined, and we determine whether it's economically viable to build on the coal ash landfill, which Duke currently does not intend to do. We really don't know. We can't calculate the cost of energy from the whole package.
I respect that. You can't do that today, and that's a fair answer. But I guess, do you have an opinion about whether this project would put us so close to a tipping point that it would leave insufficient room to develop the additional solar that's part of the package?
So, obviously the cost of the combined cycles is much larger than the cost of this facility. So that if you take a weighted average of the energy costs, it's not going to change much the cost of those CCs. But like I said, Duke didn't. They proposed in their application to build those CCs. They proposed 3 other options: rooftop, utility scale, or community solar. And I feel like Duke has some obligation to seek out ways to reduce the total burden on DEP ratepayers. And in this case, I simply don't believe that they took every available option and proposed that community solar or other type of facility.
The point there, as I take it from your answer, is that the contribution of this project to the average weighted cost of the package of Western North Carolina modernization projects is probably small enough to where it really wouldn't override the cost advantage of replacing those old coal units with the combined cycle gas units.
So I haven't done this analysis. It's kind of speculative. I would say you're probably close to accurate.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so if I look at this as a package of projects and compare them to what they're replacing, I'm probably still going to be net better off than I was.
It's likely, but like I said, if the Asheville site was able to be built and satisfy that 15 megawatts along with Hot Springs, this site might not even be necessary at all, and we might be able to get more economical energy overall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I appreciate your doing the exercise with me. Thank you. As far as we could today, as far as we could. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Duffley.
I have no questions.
Okay, Commissioner Hughes.
Yes, I have several. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. If I understand correctly, the main criteria threshold that you're using for your cost comparisons is the levelized cost. You mentioned the install cost, but most of your calculations are based on the levelized cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the comparison that we used in this docket, and the primary reason for that is simply because every other solar facility that's built in this state, whether it be a third-party QF or a CPRE participant or a Duke Energy, a Duke-owned utility like the Woodleaf or Moxville and Monroe facilities, we look at that avoided cost. That is the benchmark, and no QF, no QF in the state is able to receive more than avoided cost for their solar energy. So we felt it was an appropriate benchmark to use in this case.
Okay, so does that mean if we did have the cost estimate for the facility, let's say it's 10 megawatts at the Asheville site, you would use the same criteria for, if that came to us, you would use the same levelized cost criteria?
Yeah, I believe that would be one part of our analysis. And but like I said, we look at the need, the CPCN, the public convenience and necessity requirement, and we understand that there's some flexibility there. And that's why in my testimony, despite the fact that DEP provided no justification or need for the facility outside of the WCMP order, we went and took that step of looking at, what's the local load growth compared to the region? What are power transfers looking like? Is this energy and capacity needed? Because I think, you obviously, if if the facility needs a certain type of generation and that need has been identified in the IRP and the orderly capacity expansion process that's established, I think that that avoided cost litmus test is not necessarily, you can't always apply that. If you need a certain type of CT, that CT is probably going to be producing energy above avoided cost. But if that type of energy is needed, the avoided cost metric may not be appropriate. But upon us finding that there was really no need for this project, unlike Hot Springs, which had, a deferral of a distribution line and reliability benefits and frequency regulation, outside of without those benefits, this is just a solar only facility, and the region simply doesn't need this type of energy, and it's providing no winter morning capacity, which is DEP's West planning criteria for now going forward. I think we've tried to apply that flexibility, but certainly once we found that there was really no need for the facility, the avoided cost is what we looked at.
Well, if I understand you correctly, then how does that gel with what I understood was a policy directive, or maybe it was just an aspiration to build 15 megawatts of power, of solar power in this area?
That's a good question. So, we certainly give the WCMP order weight, and we say, look, there is a directive that the commission had in 2016 to build solar and storage in the region. However, as you may know, I testified or filed testimony in the Hot Springs docket, where we also looked at this test, and that the commission came out and in their order in the Hot Springs docket said that this WCMP is not sufficient to solely justify the public convenience and necessity requirement. There needs to be other, the facility needs to be justified on its own merits, and that the WCMP is not a blank check as evidenced by the cost cap that was put in place in the Hot Springs docket. So, we looked at not only the WCMP order, which directed Duke to file a CPCN, not necessarily just to build it at any cost. And we said that this facility and that order in conjunction with the Hot Springs order seemed to clearly lay out to us, at least, that the commission that you are expecting Duke to build cost-effective generation. And in my opinion, there is likely that the Asheville site will be more cost-effective than the Woodfin site. That it's possible that the Asheville capacity could be increased beyond the 9 to 10 megawatts, which would render the need for this facility moot. And then, we also, look for other benefits or other ways to reduce the cost, which, DP, I believe, should have explored or should explore going forward if they want to build this facility.
Okay, couple more questions. I'd like to make a slight addition to Chair Mitchell's late filing request with the cost data. I think she asked for the geographical differences, or as specific as you can for North Carolina. You might have heard this in her request, but if you could also make whatever information is available based on the size of the facility. So if there is any data of a 5 megawatt facility versus a 10 or versus a 15 megawatt facility, that would be quite helpful, because I think sometimes they lump together 5 to 15, but it would, if I hear what you're saying, you're talking a lot about comparing a 5 to a 10 megawatt facility. So I'd like any insight we could have on that.
Sure, I'll provide the report and some of the data tables that we did look at.
Okay, and you've said, you used the term more cost effective for this particular, alternative at the Asheville site. If it came in at 20% more cost effective, that would still, from an install cost, that would still, doing the math right, would still most likely put it higher than the levelized cost. Would you come back with the same request for someone to meet that incremental difference? It would just be a smaller incremental difference to meet?
So I think that's a good question, and it's hard to understand what the premium would be at the Asheville site, without understanding the costs and the maintenance. But I think that there are significant opportunities at the Asheville site for economies of scale to reduce the overall cost of the facility. There's savings just by being on Duke-owned land with maintenance crews and staff already on site to to perform any needed maintenance, and that might drive the cost down lower. And in addition, Duke might even be willing to propose in its Asheville site additional benefits for the facility, such as frequency regulation or energy storage to meet winter morning peaks and that type of thing. So I think we look at the significant quantities of solar that are being added in North Carolina at or below avoided costs, and for Duke to propose a solar facility, a solar only facility with no additional benefits or other deferrals or cost savings to ratepayers at a significant premium to avoided costs, we're going to have some heartburn and potentially object to that. But a lot is up to Duke and how they structure and what kind of benefits they anticipate can be provided.
Well, speaking of the other benefits, if I understand, Duke has also mentioned the fact that it's a public-private partnership, or with a governmental nonprofit unit, and it's on a landfill. Are you aware of any similar installations across North Carolina of this size on a public or private landfill? I mean, they may exist. I don't know.
So we explored that a little bit. To my knowledge, in North Carolina, there's not. The EPA does track solar sites and other renewable energy sites that have been built on, closed landfills and of that nature. And I believe it is Duke Energy Indiana has built a site on a landfill in its territory, subject to check. So that database is kept. So they have built that in their other territories, but here not so much. And during discovery, Duke has stated that they have no plans now to build solar on any of their closed coal ash landfills. So when Duke, and in addition, the Marshall, the solar site at the Marshall plant that's built on the coal ash landfill, Duke has said that is not necessarily comparable to a municipal landfill. And so they already have some experience with that. And so when Duke says that they have this benefit of building on a landfill, I read their testimony as kind of implying that would lead to, additional beneficial reuse of landfills. But to my knowledge, none of that is really planned or in the works. So I'm a little bit skeptical of that benefit. And certainly, we appreciate the public-private partnership between Duke Energy and Buncombe County. However, we don't oppose, we support these municipalities going for their renewable energy goals. We just feel that the cost of meeting those goals need to be somewhat self-contained and not spread to other DEP ratepayers, who many of whom may not be willing to accept any rate increase. The consumer statements of position I read in rate cases are generally vehemently opposed to rate increases, and I have to consider those ratepayers' interests as well.
Okay, you mentioned this, that you support that, and it could maybe be a benefit, I don't know, to the governmental public-private nature. Are you aware of, same question as far as the landfills, are you aware of any facility of this scale, a 5 megawatt facility in this kind of partnership with a local government, given again, this potential future demand by local governments? Do you know if there are any of these facilities in other parts of the state?
Yeah, I mean, I do. For example, one I can point to is the city of Charlotte entered into a green source advantage agreement with a private solar developer to develop, I believe, I don't know the exact megawatts, and it might be confidential, but I think they've applied for a decent sized solar facility through the GSA. We also have HB 589 also established, first of all, there's additional capacity in the GSA program that's still available. HB 589 established community solar options for private entities that want to purchase and invest in renewable energy. There's also the solar leasing and the solar rebate programs, which allow private entities to enter into these types of arrangements to facilitate the renewable energy goals. So, I see many avenues for towns like Durham and Buncombe County and Asheville who have set these renewable energy goals. I see many venues for them to meet those goals within already existing programs. Another is the Renewable Energy Advantage program for non-residential customers, where RECs can be purchased directly. So I certainly see many venues that exist outside of this particular project, which appears to shift those incremental costs to other ratepayers as opposed to containing them within the entity that proposed them. And just as an aside, I know Duke is proposing this facility to satisfy the WCMP and also to work with Buncombe County. But I would note is that Buncombe County put this proposal out for a bid, an RFP, and Duke was only one of 3 entities that bid in, and they were selected largely due to their favorable lease terms and I'm sure there's some advantage Buncombe County has with working with Duke, but the fact that 2 other entities bid in, and were rejected in favor of the Duke proposal, it hints to me that those private proposals might have been viable, but Duke was able to propose more favorable terms, maybe possibly due to the WCMP and their ability to rate base the asset.
Okay, well, the part about the public-private partnership options was very helpful. If you have a list of ones that you thought were comparable or that you did for your research, if we could have a late filing just of just several of those that you mentioned, the Charlotte one, but anything else that you're aware of and that you noted as options. A lot of what you said I think were to be determined, but if there were anything that's in place, that would be helpful. Last question, back to the cost premium. I heard earlier from the Duke witness that the earliest that the site could be built on the Asheville site was, I think it was 2023 or 2024. I don't recall now, but it was one of those. That would, I think, put it into the 10% ITC rate, whereas I think what they're saying with this facility is that it could be built in time to qualify for, I think, the 22% ITC rate. I know it's kind of complicated how the tax credit works, when you rate base it, but have you looked at what that disincentive, how that would compare versus this premium of scale? So in other words, I think out of the gate, it's going to have a lower tax credit, but then you've offered up some potential savings. Have you done any kind of analysis looking at what it would take as a cost effectiveness premium to overcome that, that loss of that, 12% incremental federal tax credit?
That's a good question. I haven't directly performed that analysis to test what a lower ITC would provide. I think that we start to get kind of speculative there. We really don't know what the ultimate fate of that ITC is, or other energy related incentives that might appear in the future in the next five years or so. So I think you're certainly correct in that a lower ITC is going to make this facility generally more expensive. And particularly, Duke's requirement to kind of normalize that tax credit is also puts it at a disadvantage to third-party solar who can claim that in a faster fashion. But that would, I think, be maybe a good question for Duke to kind of see if they've run that numbers. But I imagine it would have some impact.
Okay, and then this might be a question for Duke, but assuming that they, I think they've said they at least would be willing to continue to discuss the community solar. Would your feeling change about the community solar if the planning time for that project pushed it out of the ITC window as well? And I don't know if that's the case or not, but I mean, I can ask that to the Duke witnesses. But would that change your favorable view about going community solar if they said they couldn't do it, to get the higher ITC?
So it's true that if this facility is pushed out, it's going to get a lower tax rate, which would increase the premium that subscribers would be asked to pay. But I couldn't really speak too much to kind of what that impact would be. But I do know that this program, was the HB 589 was signed into law in 2017, and the community solar program, Duke was working on that, throughout 2018, and I believe it may have been approved in 2019. So I think that, we obviously can't go back in time, but this community solar option in this region was something that Duke proposed in 2016 when it first filed for the Asheville CCs. It specifically highlighted community solar as a potential option to meet that commitment. And so I feel that Duke should have been considering that as an option when developing this program. And it appears that they kind of did not. And now here we are at the stage asking, if we go community solar, will it increase costs? I think that we should have been pushing that, and that should have been an option in the run up to this and development of this project. But that premium that ratepayers would pay if they were to subscribe, if this were restructured as community solar, that premium that ratepayers would pay, it will be some sort of premium based upon the cost of the facility. But we also have to consider the significant community support for this project. Obviously, not everyone who sent an email into the docket would necessarily pay a monthly premium to support this project, but I feel that there's some correlation between the high levels of community support and people that might be willing to pay a few extra dollars a month for a community solar subscription to support this project.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all your time. No further questions.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner McKissick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a few questions. Mr. Thomas, did you attach any value to the uniqueness of this project being constructed on a municipal landfill site and the reuse potential of this being done in a way that it hasn't been done before by Duke?
So obviously it's hard to put a dollar value on that. I will say that in the past, particularly looking at the Hot Springs facility, we did attach some qualitative value to Duke Energy getting experience integrating a microgrid and integrating battery storage. So I think that we consider that in terms of the landfill, but through discovery, Duke indicated that they have no current plans to build new solar on landfills, and in addition, they have already built a small site at the Marshall coal ash landfill, so they already have some experience in ballasted racking systems, which were required at that landfill. I understand that a municipal landfill and a coal ash landfill have slightly different requirements, and there are complications there, but we didn't see that experience gained by building on a municipal landfill was worth the significant premium that this facility would incur to other DEP ratepayers.
And let me ask you this. You mentioned ballasted, system going in, as the foundation that goes on top of the landfill rather than penetrating the soil in the cap. Did you project what the additional cost might be of this particular facility based upon them using a ballasted system?
Just to tease out that particular cost.
That particular component of the cost, because that is clearly a unique component as opposed to it, it's laying on top of the ground as opposed to penetrating into the ground and going, I guess, potentially into the cap. From what I understand, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So no, we did not attempt to kind of tease that out. I think the EPC bid that I reviewed that Duke had gained didn't really tease that out either. So we didn't make that attempt to kind of differentiate what if this was just a hill instead of a landfill. But I'd imagine it had some impact, but Duke might be the better witness to kind of speak to that impact. But we didn't see that it would necessarily reduce the cost of this facility below the significant premium that's already being incurred. And in any case, that cost increase from the ballasted system, we're not necessarily convinced that is worth the experience that Duke states that it's going to gain from overseeing an EPC contract on a landfill.
Is that information that you feel like you could obtain and provide in a late file exhibit?
That would probably, that's not something that I can necessarily tease out with the data that I have already requested through discovery, but Duke witnesses may be able to make an estimate of that in a late file exhibit, but I would have to perform additional discovery to Duke to get that information.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the community solar route as being one that would affect the economics of the project. Now, if Duke were to go the community solar route, wouldn't that impact the way the renewable energy certificates would be potentially treated or sold?
Yes, it would. And I did address that in my testimony, a potential workaround for that, where those RECs could be purchased after the fact by Buncombe County.
Okay, now, but if you go to community solar route, don't the community solar have kind of the first dibs on them, so to speak?
Yes, and in the existing community solar docket, the program as proposed, Duke would simply retire those RECs on behalf of the customers, but the customers are given the option to retain them themselves. And so I believe I envisioned any community solar option as kind of giving ratepayers the option to retire the RECs if they so chose, while also giving them the option to offset some of their premium through through selling those RECs to Buncombe County.
And without revealing any confidential information, is it possible to share what you project the economic impact would be if Buncombe County was to acquire the renewable energy certificates at what you might consider to be their fair market value?
Sorry, let me just make sure I understand the question. You're asking if I've if I put in the fair market value for RECs, what would that reduce the incremental cost enough?
That is exactly what I'm trying to obtain. If you
Sure.
actually performed that analysis to see what the projected cost would be as it relates to this project, since that appears to be a significant concern of public staff.
Yeah, so I think it's clear that the actual incremental cost of these RECs is likely outside Buncombe County, as stated in DEP's rebuttal, that they are not going to be able to pay that full incremental cost. I did some analysis of different REC prices, and in the Hot Springs docket, DEP estimated a certain value for RECs. In the recent REPS rider dockets, we have additional estimates for RECs. Depending on how RECs are procured from the open market, they can range in value from $1 to $5 or even more, depending on the mix that's gained. I think that obviously the higher the value that Buncombe County would be paying for the RECs, the lower the premium. But in any case, the substantial premium is too high for even if we chose a high-end REC estimate of $4 or $5. I think that is probably it's not going to reduce that significant premium enough to the point where we would be okay with this solar-only facility to be producing power at well above avoided cost.
So let me ask this. So if the RECs were sold at what you might consider to be fair market value to Buncombe County, public staff would still be opposed to the project as it's presently being considered. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that the premium is simply too high for the fair market value of the RECs to be overcome. And that's just another item of concern here in general, is that the price that DEP itself pays for RECs is significantly higher than that it currently pays for RECs for its REPS compliance is significantly higher than the current market value, mostly due to legacy and older projects under higher avoided cost rates. But we also recognize that if all Buncombe County wanted was RECs, they could have bought their RECs through the Renewable Advantage program that Duke currently offers. They could have bought their own RECs on the open market. But this facility is simply operating at too high of a premium to be offset by by only a fair market value for the REC prices.
Okay, I understand your explanation. But when I look at your testimony on page 19, it seems to be somewhat in conflict. However, it gets into a part of your confirmational testimony, so perhaps that might be addressed more appropriately on the phone line at some further point in time. But I'm specifically looking at page 19 of your testimony, beginning on line 19 and continuing over to page 20, going over to line 3 or so. Is there some way you can comment on that without getting into confidential information? Please help me reconcile that with what you just stated.
So I think that there's the way that the traditional definition of the REC price in North Carolina under SB3 has been that, you know, the cost of the facility over avoided costs, that incremental cost, is the REC price. And that is independent of any voluntary market price for RECs. So I think, you know, asking for, trying to avoid confidential, but there's just a fundamental difference there between when we talk about the market price for RECs and the incremental price of this facility, which under North Carolina parlance, the incremental price is the REC price. And so that's where the kind of conflict is there.
Okay.
I don't know if that resolves it.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
In my mind. I mean,
Okay.
it's challenging to, because of course you do refer there to the full incremental costs, but if the full incremental costs were reflected in the RECs, I take it public staff might have a different position.
I'm sorry, can you just state that again?
Yeah, if the full incremental cost of the RECs was something Buncombe County was paying in this particular case, would public staff's position be different?
Yes, absolutely, because that, you know, that would mean that the DEP ratepayers would only be paying avoided costs for this facility. And in that case, the DEP ratepayer and the public staff would kind of be indifferent whether the energy came from this facility or from the DEP system. So I think that, yeah, that would certainly change our position there. Our main concern is the significant premium that DEP customers as a whole, not just in DEP West, but in DEP East as well, they're going to be paying a premium for the energy produced from this facility that is, you know, going to be displacing much, you know, very high cost solar is going to be displacing much lower cost system energy. And that's really our concern, is that just as if DEP had entered into a contract with a QF under PURPA to pay them a significant premium to the avoided cost rates at the time, I think the public staff would also have an objection there because that violates that kind of ratepayer indifference stance.
And I guess my follow-up will be this. We recently conducted evidentiary hearings as well as hearings we received public comment in the DEP rate case, which is still pending. Do you recall there being public comment received in Asheville in the DEP case where people were commenting upon solar and their openness or willingness to pay somewhat more for solar if it were in fact instituted more wide scale as a part of DEP's way of generating electricity?
Sure. So there are hundreds of community statements of position, and so I couldn't necessarily recall which of those came from the DEP West region versus the DEP East region. But my takeaways from reading these updates are, yes, a desire for more renewable energy. However, most of those calls for more renewable energy were coupled with statements claiming that the renewable energy is actually cheaper than system energy, and that solar energy could be procured at costs well below, you know, coal and natural gas. And And while I think that that is certainly the case if we look at larger scale or even some smaller scale facilities procured under the competitive procurement of renewable energy program. For example, there was a 7 megawatt facility procured under that was procured under avoided cost. I think we have to take those with an understanding that many of those consumer statements also called against any rate increase at all. So I think that there's some conflict there with calling for more renewable energy that's purportedly cheaper than system costs, while at the same time not wanting any rate increases at all. And I think that this Woodfin facility is kind of contrary to all that. It's going to increase rates. It's going to impose a premium, and it's clearly more expensive than energy produced from a combined cycle plant or similar in the region.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any further questions at this time.
All
right, we are going to take a break for our court reporter. We will go off the record. We'll go back on. We'll be back on at 11:40.
Please turn off your video. Thank you.
All right, Kim Mitchell, give me a signal. All right, let's go back on the record, please. Duke, questions on commissioners' questions?
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Just a couple of questions for Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas, am I ready to go? Am I okay?
I hear you.
Oh, there you are. You were asking questions by Chair Mitchell and about the average cost for 5 megawatt solar in Western North Carolina. And you mentioned that there were 54 megawatts of solar in, I think you said in Western North Carolina, but you did indicate that they were probably in under the stale avoided cost rates from the 136 and maybe the 140 docket. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
You also asked some questions about the lease, and you do have a copy of the letter dated November 10th from the county, I believe, which indicates that the county would be willing to essentially waive the lease payments if this project were to go forward. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, November 10th, what letter are we talking?
From Buncombe County to the docket.
I see additional comments on the 17th. Is that what you're referring to?
I was referring to the November 10th letter from Buncombe County. I'll just read you the last paragraph. It says, "We have reviewed the concerns raised by the public staff and are willing to help address them. The county is willing to essentially waive the lease payments of the retired landfill site to address the concerns addressed by the public staff."
Yes, yeah, I've got that in front of me. I do see that. Like I stated in my testimony, the waiving of that lease cost would not significantly would reduce that substantial premium.
And you seem to express a lot of concern about the public staff has about the cost of solar in North Carolina. I've been coming to the Monday Agenda conferences for years. And for the past, seems like 5 to 7 years, we have these CPCN applications before the commission. A lot of them are for 5 megawatt projects and have been. And I don't recall the public staff ever really raising a concern about the cost of any of those projects. Do you recall raising any concern about any of those projects that were approved on the Monday agenda?
I've only dealt with some of those projects, but I will say that each of those projects is most of those projects, if not all, are CPCNs for qualified facilities, which will sell their power to a regulated utility under PURPA. And those facilities will not receive any $1 more than the applicable avoided cost that's in place at that time. So I don't understand why we would raise a issue there, because there is no incremental cost of those facilities. In addition, we've also, I would just add a little bit, the public staff has taken a position in many previous dockets, such as avoided cost, the green source advantage docket, and many others, that the avoided costs have dropped over time, and we are concerned with applying stale rates to new facilities. Anytime we review a CPCN or a PURPA dispute or contract or CPRE, price cap, we always look at the applicable avoided cost at that time.
And I don't think you raised any concern about the potential for overloading distribution circuits in Eastern North Carolina with regard to these numerous projects that are before the commission. Is that correct?
We have raised concerns about overloading the distribution system and consuming available distribution capacity, but that's primarily in the North Carolina interconnection procedure proceedings. Generally, that's where we raise those concerns. And in addition, the legislature in the North Carolina General Assembly is clearly shown through its reduction in terms for PURPA facilities and the reduction in the maximum size for standard offer contracts, that they desire to see those smaller facilities kind of held to a shorter term, possibly lower rates, and be forced to refresh those rates at a sooner than it used to be, as well as negotiated contracts for larger facilities being reduced to 5 years. So I think that we look at the General Assembly's concerns there, and the fact that avoided cost rates for particularly larger facilities than 1 megawatt are refreshed every 5 years. I think that goes a long way to protecting ratepayers from potentially overpaying.
So I think you indicated that there was a potential for more solar in Western North Carolina. Are there any CPRE winning projects in DEP West service area that you're aware of? And I thought you said something about House Bill 589. Did you indicate that, in essence, House Bill 589 canceled the WCMP and made it?
I don't believe that it canceled the WCMP, but I think that conditions change all the time in the energy regulatory space. For example, we just saw that the FERC has revised some terms of the 1978 PURPA law, allowing different payments to be made and the way that payments are calculated. I don't think that that means that the FERC has canceled PURPA. I think that it just changed the way it's possibly implemented, and I think that applies here. HB 589 did not cancel the WCMP, but it certainly showed the General Assembly's general intent on where it would like to see the cost of solar goes. And it also provided, as I've stated before, many other opportunities for communities to build on their local renewable energy goals. And it also formalized the community solar program, which Duke had originally proposed in its Asheville CC application as one potential method of meeting its WCMP order. So I'm not exactly sure why Duke decided against pursuing the community solar option that it proposed in 2016, but I do believe it to be viable, and I would like to see Duke explore that.
Well, are you suggesting that House Bill 589 supersedes the WCMP?
No, I'm not. I just believe that they have to be taken together. And HB 589 has changed the energy landscape in North Carolina considerably. And I think ignoring it and just simply looking at the WCMP order in a vacuum is inappropriate. We need to consider all the commission's orders as well, including the Hot Springs dockets, where in the Hot Springs order, the commission clearly stated that the WCMP itself, by itself, is not sufficient to justify the need for the facility. The public convenience and necessity requirement must still be met, and that the commission expects Duke to pursue cost-effective projects. So, I think if we're talking about taking everything and holistically, we have to consider the WCMP order with the Hot Springs orders, with HB 589, with the way that the energy landscape has changed since the WCMP order was issued.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Chair, that's all the questions I have.
All right, Mr. Little?
Yes, just one question for Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas, do you know off the top of your head, are there other 5-megawatt solar facilities that have been built in North Carolina that are at or below the avoided cost rate?
Yes, there are many of those facilities, some of them in the DP West region, and those were able, I don't know what their costs were necessarily, but I know that they're not being paid more than the avoided cost rates that were in place at the time they executed their legally enforceable obligation.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Little, I'll entertain a motion from you.
Yes. Move that Mr. Thomas's testimony and exhibit be admitted into the record.
All right, here, no objection to your motion. Exhibit 1 to Mr. Thomas's pre-filed testimony will be admitted into evidence. All right, and with that, Mr. Thomas, you may step down.
Chair Mitchell, if I may.
Mr. Dirac, you may.
Thank you. Chair Mitchell, I believe there had been a request for a late filed exhibit from you regarding construction costs for 5-megawatt projects. Along that same vein, with your permission, we'd like to request the ability to provide a late filed supplemental exhibit showing some of the information that was asked regarding where these projects are located in Western North Carolina and the applicable avoided cost rates under which these projects are being compensated. As well as any other relevant details that the commission may want to know there. Would that be acceptable for the commission for Duke to provide that?
Yeah, you may provide that information, Mr. Dirac.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman.
All right.
Excuse me, Chair Mitchell. Mr. Thomas has made various references to the Hot Springs order. I'd like to ask the commission to take judicial notice of that order, which is docket number E2 sub 1185.
All right, Mr. Little, would you please provide the date of the order just for purposes of the record?
May 10th of 2019, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. The commission will take judicial notice of the order as requested by the public staff. All right. Any additional matters before we proceed with Duke's rebuttal? All right, Duke, you may call your witnesses.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. At this time, DEP would like to call to testify the panel of Lawrence Watson and Todd Beaver. Chair Mitchell, I believe Mr. Watson has previously offered his affirmation. Please proceed with Mr. Beaver.
All right, Mr. Beaver, let me make sure. There you are. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you may proceed, Mr. Durack.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Once again, Mr. Watson, if you would just please, formality's sake, please state your full name and title for the record. Starting with Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson, you may be on mute. Give me a second. I see your video, Mr. Watson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lawrence Watson, Director, Distributed Asset Commercial Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. And Mr. Beaver, will you please state your full name and title for the record?
Todd Beaver, Director of Regulated Renewables Analytics and Structuring.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. Mr. Watson, along with Mr. Beaver, did you prepare and cause to be filed in this proceeding rebuttal testimony in question and answer format?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Beaver, did you assist in the preparation of that testimony?
Yes.
Do either of you have any changes that you need to make to your testimony at this time?
No.
No.
Mr. Watson, if I were to ask you the same questions contained in your testimony today, would your answers remain the same?
Yes.
Mr. Beaver, one procedural note, you'll probably mute questions. Thank you. It's a little awkward, but it helps the audio.
I'm sorry. Mr. Drack, can you repeat that last question? I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Yes, we will. Sorry about that. Mr. Watson, re-ask that question. Mr. Watson, if I were to ask you the same questions contained in your testimony today, would your answers remain the same?
Yes.
Thank you. And again, Mr. Beaver, if I were to ask you the same questions contained in your testimony today, would your answers remain the same?
They would.
Thank you. Chair Mitchell, at this time, I'd request that the pre-filed rebuttal testimony of the panel of Lawrence Watson and Todd Beaver be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand.
All right, hearing no objection to your motion, Mr. Durack, it will be allowed.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. At this time, I would ask, with your leave, that the panel be permitted to provide a summary of their testimony.
All right, please do so, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners. Our rebuttal testimony responds to the testimony of public witness, Mr. Jeff Thomas. Once again, the Woodfin Solar Project fulfills both the letter and the spirit of the Commission's WCMP order through a unique partnership with Buncombe County that is broadly supported by the community at large. As a result of this partnership, the company has identified an ideal site at which the company is able to site a 5-megawatt site in the Asheville area at below market land cost, while also gathering further experience and knowledge concerning the construction and operation of a solar generating facility on a closed landfill. The WCMP overall and this public-private partnership with Buncombe County specifically is aligned with a strategy that represents a collaborative and innovative way to support investment in increasing renewable energy resources in an area of the state that has lagged other areas of the state in terms of solar development. In contrast, public staff's assessment of the public interest in this proceeding is nearly entirely focused on the measuring stick of current avoided cost. Yet such a myopic focus on current avoided costs ignores both the greater context of the WCMP and the Commission's recognition of the elastic nature of the public convenience and necessity standard. The company acknowledges that the cost of the project as measured on a levelized cost of energy basis is higher than avoided costs, and further agrees that avoided costs are an important tool to be considered in this and other regulatory policy contexts. But relying solely on current avoided costs to assess whether this project is in the public interest is simply not reflective of the Commission's WCMP order, which sought to modernize the company's electric supply in Western Carolinas, including through the development of renewable resources. Nowhere in the WCMP order or the underlying proceeding did the Commission or any party identify avoided cost as the sole benchmark of the public interest. Instead, the company was directed to develop smaller solar resources in an area of the state whose topography and land prices are not conducive to the lowest cost solar resources. The Commission certainly could have directed the company to simply develop the lowest cost solar resources at or below avoided costs regardless of the area of the state, but that would have not been consistent with the intent of the WCMP. Instead, the Commission directed the development of solar resources under certain parameters that aligned with the region's broad support for the development of new renewable resources. Therefore, the question to be answered in this proceeding is not whether the Woodfin Solar Project is or is not below current avoided cost, but whether the company has delivered a reasonably cost-effective project in light of the parameters of the WCMP order. And the answer to that question is a definitive yes. As it relates to those factors that are within the company's control, the company has taken reasonable steps to ensure a cost-effective project. Take, for instance, the capital cost of the project. On a percentage basis, the largest cost by far of any solar project is the engineering, equipment, and construction costs. In the case of the Woodfin Solar Project, the engineering, equipment, and construction costs represent almost 90% of the total cost of the project. The construction costs for this project have been obtained through a competitive process, and as I've testified, are consistent with current market prices. In fact, when measured on a capital cost basis, the Woodfin Solar Project is more cost effective than other solar projects previously approved by the Commission. In the same vein, the partnership with Buncombe County has allowed the company to obtain a below market lease rate for a property in the Asheville area, and in fact may allow the company to access the site at no cost. Finally, the site identified by the company is well situated from an interconnection perspective, which will allow the project to interconnect at a relatively low cost and without any foreseeable complexity or interconnection challenges. In contrast, the most substantial factors contributing to the delta between LCOE and avoided costs are outside of the company's control. For instance, as the Commission is well aware from its regulatory oversight, there has been a substantial drop in avoided costs since the WCMP order due to numerous complex factors. Once again, it is certainly appropriate for avoided costs to be updated over time to reflect market realities, but it is not appropriate to backcast those updated avoided costs in a manner that constrains the ability of the company to fulfill the directives of the WCMP order, particularly given that the Commission itself did not impose such a parameter in this order. Similarly, the tax treatment of the project, namely the requirement that the company normalize the investment tax credits, is outside of the company's control, but materially contributes to the LCOE delta on the Woodfin Solar Project. But as it relates to those factors that are in the company's control, the company has delivered a cost-effective project. Once again, the Woodfin Solar Project is broadly supported in the community, as reflected in the scores of supported letters filed in this docket. Notably, in light of the public staff's opposition, two of the interveners in the underlying WCMP proceeding, Mountain True and Sierra Club, have requested a rescheduling of the public hearing in order to allow further support for the project to be heard. Buncombe County also filed a second letter in this docket, noting that the Woodfin Solar Project is part of a complex, broad agreement for future energy generation in a specific region that involved numerous trade-offs by all parties, and that commitment to 15 megawatts of solar in the Asheville area was a key part of obtaining community support for the WCMP. Buncombe County further noted that it hoped that the Woodfin Solar Project can move forward so Buncombe County can begin planning and implementing other elements of our regional clean energy strategy, and that disapproval of this project would be a major step backwards for our efforts. In conclusion, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners, DEP is proud of the Woodfin Solar Project that has been presented for the Commission consideration in this proceeding. The project is entirely consistent with the terms and expectations of the WCMP order, is broadly supported by the community, will be constructed at a competitive capital cost, is reasonably priced in light of the overall context of the WCMP, and should be found to be in the public interest.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Chair Mitchell, the witnesses are available for cross-examination.
All right, Mr. Little.
The public staff has no questions for this panel, Your Honor.
All right, gentlemen, several questions from commission staff. So I'll begin and then I'll cede to my colleagues. But in your testimony, page 20 specifically, you discuss the public staff's recommendation related to rearranging or restructuring this project to fit into the community solar model. And your testimony indicates that you all will re-engage with the public staff on that issue. Have you all re-engaged with the public staff? And if so, where are you in the process?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was trying to find that document. Yes, we have had a subsequent conversation with the public staff about the concept of community solar. During that conversation, however, with the public staff, we did mention that we have also had to have conversations with Buncombe County to discuss the potential to revising the lease agreement, as the treatment of RECs associated with that lease agreement are an integral part of the overall lease agreement, and any adjustment to that lease agreement would have to be approved by the entire board of commissioners for Buncombe County, and that approval is not guaranteed.
Okay, so just following up there, I mean, should the commission hold on making a decision on this application until we hear from the company additional information on your efforts related to community solar?
I think Commissioner, I think the intent would be to proceed with this filing as is at this point, and not bog down the proceedings with community solar.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioner Brown-Bland, questions from you?
No, I have no questions.
All right, Commissioner Gray?
No questions.
Commissioner Klinefelter?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Duffley?
No questions.
And Commissioner Hughes? Commissioner Hughes, is that nothing from you? I think you were muted, maybe.
I was double muted. Sorry. No questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner McKissick.
One or two quick questions, Madam Chair.
Okay.
One of the things that you spoke about was the uniqueness of building this particular facility on a municipal landfill and lessons that could be learned from that. Could you speak to the distinctions between building this in a municipal landfill as it is versus building this on, say, some other type of landfill where you might have had cold ash there previously, or whatever? But help me understand the uniqueness and what can be learned from this particular project that Duke has not been able to learn from other projects it's pursued.
Yes, sir. I can answer that question. So this project on a landfill represents an adaptive reuse of a site that otherwise would be undevelopable for other potential uses. I think it's adequately suited to support solar in this case, particularly in this part of the state where finding suitable flat land that can support a solar facility of this scale is scarce in that region. Specific to building on a municipal landfill, while that has been while those types of developments have occurred kind of throughout the United States, particularly in the northeast of the country, we don't see a lot of municipal landfills that have been developed in the Carolinas. I'm not familiar with any other municipal projects at this time of this scale, certainly. There are some differences in how those facilities will be built and operated, and I think that, again, as an adaptive, this could be a good path forward to additional solar development within the state of North Carolina. When it comes to coal ash landfills, those landfills are fairly dense, and so you won't have a lot of settlement or subsidence, if any, on those facilities. On a municipal landfill, you will have some various degrees of settlement and subsidence on those landfills due to the nature of the underlying trash degrading over time, and so you'll see shifting of those soil conditions. And so building a facility on a landfill like that with racking that can accommodate that type of settlement and subsidence is good experience. Again, if we're going to look to continue to make investments utilizing or reutilizing landfills, municipal landfills. Also, there's treatment of existing methane gas those landfills. And so building facilities around those methane venting mechanisms or structures or piping at those locations, again, provides an opportunity for us to understand how these facilities can operate in concert with the closure permits and the closure of these landfills, and can give us good both construction and operating experience in the long term on these types of municipal landfills.
Has Duke explored the possibility of looking at other municipal landfills elsewhere in North Carolina as potential sites for solar generating facilities, separate apart from what you're looking at here in Buncombe County?
Commissioner, I think I didn't hear the first part of your question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I can't hear you, Commissioner McKissick.
You can't hear me either?
So, Commissioner McKissick, just start from the top. Ask your question again, please, sir.
Sure. All right. Can you hear me now? Okay, very good. The question was simply this. At this time, has Duke explored possibilities for siting, say, solar generating facilities on municipal landfills anywhere else in North Carolina in terms of potential sites that might have been looked at, evaluated, or where information that could be obtained from this facility, if it were approved, could be, utilized?
Okay, thank you for your question. We have looked at other potential sites, other potential landfills throughout the state of North Carolina and South Carolina and other jurisdictions as well. We have not evaluated those landfills at the same level or depth at this time. The Buncombe County landfill will be our first solar on a landfill project that has gotten this far through the due diligence process. And again, it's a lot of that was brought about by the fact that this is part of the Western Carolinas modernization project, and it's very challenging to find sites to support solar. And so this represented an ideal location within the context of WCMP. I will say, Commissioner, that there is ongoing interest from municipalities on evaluation and developing solar on municipal landfills. Without naming the jurisdictions, I have spoken directly with several within the state of North Carolina that do have interest in exploring this concept further.
Let me shift gears a bit. In terms of the RECs that would be generated by this site, this particular project, how many renewable energy certificates are we talking about? I mean, could you put a number on it so that I can get a sense and feel as to what this additional cost might be if if perhaps these were, available to some entity other than Buncombe County. I'm trying to get some sense as to how many, RECs are actually being generated from this particular facility in this proposal.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Beaver to check me on this number, but I'd say, Commissioner, approximately 9,400 RECs will be generated in year one from this facility.
I would agree with that.
That sounds correct. And after year one, would there be any change, or would that be consistent?
There would be a slight decline year over year, in line with the projected production degradation, which we're estimating to be about a 0.4% a year. So it'd be a very slow decline over time.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the follow-up question, without getting into any confidential information, is, well, let me restructure this question because I don't want to get into that, and that perhaps would do so. Will there be another panel coming back in to talk about cost in a way that we'll be able to get some understanding as to what public staff is looking at in terms of what they believe to be the fair market value of the reps or the additional incremental costs that ought to be involved with this project? Is there another panel that's going to deal with any of those issues? Because it's an issue that the public staff has raised, so I'm trying to wrestle with it and get my arms around it to understand the actual magnitude of what they are suggesting in terms of additional costs that as a result of what has been now structured as the transaction would look like with Buncombe County.
Commissioner, I think perhaps if we were to go into deep detail on the financial arrangement, we would need to go to a confidential session. However, I can add some context on the concept of the REC treatment. And I think what Mr. Thomas was describing in terms of placing a value on the RECs was assigning the incremental cost above avoided cost as the REC value. That is the case through REPS compliance. However, as Mr. Thomas noted, we have not actually procured RECs since I think I may be off by a year or two, Commissioner, but since 2016, we have not procured RECs for compliance purposes. There is also another market outside of the REPS compliance, though, and I'll refer to that as the voluntary REC market in North Carolina. And customers are able to go and procure RECs at a market rate that is significantly lower than the incremental cost above avoided cost for this solar facility or another solar facility similarly sized. So Buncombe County is fully aware of the REC market. They're very sophisticated with their sustainability plans and their understanding of the voluntary REC market. In this case, their goal was to make their landfill available to support their landfill available to support the development of solar. And this project aligns well with their goal to have solar at this location, as well as support the goals of the Western Carolinas Modernization Project. They could simply go to the market and they could buy RECs at a significantly lower value than what Mr. Thomas was suggesting in terms of valuing those RECs at the incremental cost above avoided cost. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that does help me. That does provide some context, and so I appreciate that response. Madam Chair, I don't have any further questions at this time.
All right, I do have an additional question for the panel. The public staff raises the issue that this is this facility is proposed as solar only, suggests that solar may provide additional benefits to the system, through I heard Mr. Thomas reference frequency regulation. We're increasingly seeing CPCN applications that would pair solar and storage, and recognize that some of those solar plus storage facilities have been approved in other contexts. So talk some about the company's decision to go with solar only here, and the extent to which it has explored other benefits that could be provided to the system if it were to pair with storage or utilize this facility for some other purpose.
Okay, I can start that. I can start on that answer. Sorry, I moved my camera here a little bit. I can start on that, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Beaver to add some context. At the time when we were looking for this site, we were working on parallel paths with the solar development team as well as the energy storage team. The Hot Springs project is an example of where solar and storage, those types of projects aligned well, because there was a unique need, as you know, at Hot Springs for additional support, as Mr. Thomas described in his testimony. The energy storage team has also been looking at additional sites for energy storage, and there is another facility, I believe the Rock Hill energy storage facility that is part of the Western Carolinas Modernization Project that is essentially down the road from Woodfin from this location. At the time we developed this project, due to the focus of the energy storage team as well as the use cases for batteries, the decision was made not to pursue a solar and storage facility at this location. It certainly could have complicated interconnection at that location as well. And so we determined in evaluating this site, also with the limits of the weight that we're allowed to put on the cap of that landfill, that solar only was the appropriate use case for this location. But it was discussed in general, but we decided again that because of this particular site and the other locations of energy storage to support WCMP, that this site was better suited for a solar only effort. Mr. Beaver, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, a few things, and Larry's, Mr. Watson's much more familiar with the development process that's been going on with that team than maybe I have. I mean, I'll kind of reflect back a little bit on Hot Springs in particular, since Mr. Thomas brought it up, and it has been brought up a little bit in both testimony and some of the data requests. It was pointed out earlier, there was a deferral value associated with Hot Springs that was certainly included with that. I mean, I don't know that in this particular use case, there would be a deferral value. So depending on what cost effectiveness metric is being evaluated, it would be speculative on my part, but I'm not certain if for this particular location, without that deferral value, if adding battery would have helped the relative rate impacts or not. I think also just kind of piggyback on what Mr. Watson had said with the other location, the Rock Hill location, probably it satisfied or close to satisfied our 5 megawatts within the order. So those are probably some of the other things, but like I said, the details behind that I'm not as familiar with.
Okay, thank you for that response. All right, I have nothing further. I'll see if there are questions on commissioners' questions. Mr. Little.
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Duke, any questions on commissioners' questions?
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Just a few minor questions here. Let me begin with a topic that Commissioner McKissick was exploring. Mr. Watson, you were asked a series of questions about the experience that Duke would gain, by through this project and constructing and operating on a landfill, closed municipal landfill. Do you recall those questions?
Yes. Yeah.
And Mr. Watson, assuming that the state continues to pursue a policy of broader deployment of solar resources, Do you believe it would be beneficial for the company to have a greater understanding of not just the construction challenges, but also the operation and maintenance challenges and unique opportunities of development of solar on closed municipal landfills?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Watson. And you were also asked a series of questions from Chair Mitchell regarding the ways in which the company has engaged Buncombe County on the project structuring subsequent to the filing of public staff testimony. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And of the options discussed with Buncombe County for any adjustments to the current arrangement, what have they indicated to you as their strong preference with respect to this project?
They indicate a strong preference for option one, which is basically netting out the value of or assigning a value to the RECs to equal of the lease agreement. So actually the land lease agreement would be a no cost site lease agreement. They expressed that both through staff discussions and, as I understand it, a subsequent letter by Chair Newman to this proceeding.
And so under that arrangement, what you referred to as option one, the lease payment would go to zero, but Buncombe County would retain the RECs, correct?
Yes, they would be buying the RECs in that arrangement.
And would you agree that the fact that Buncombe County would be retaining these RECs essentially means that a community solar tie-in is not possible with this project?
That's correct. That's my understanding.
And therefore, there's no, again, just to affirm your testimony, there's no need to defer a decision on this proceeding in any form or fashion because the answer that we've gotten from Buncombe County is fairly clear.
Yes, that's correct.
And would you agree that now that Duke has essentially the offer of a $0 land cost lease, so the land cost has gone to zero, and the fact that the largest cost of this project, capital costs, were competitively bid and have been delivered at a price that's in line with market price, would you agree that that makes this project cost effective within the parameters of the WCMP order?
Yes, I would.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Chair Mitchell, I have no further questions.
All right, with that, I believe we have come to the end of the examination of this panel. Gentlemen, you may step down, and Mr. Drack, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. At this time, DEP would like to call to testify Mr. Jason Walls.
All right, Mr. Walls, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, Mr. Walls, you are on mute, so please unmute, please.
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Drack, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Mr. Walls, please, again, just for the record, please state your full name and title.
Jason Walls, and I'm the manager of local government and community relations in the Asheville area.
And I apologize, Chair Mitchell, I got a little carried away. Mr. Summers was going to handle this witness, and I totally steamrolled him. I apologize, Mr. Summers, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's not the first time I've been steamrolled in a commission hearing before. So thank you.
If we were in person, Mr. Summers could have easily kicked me under the table, but virtually he's not able to do that.
No problem. Apologize, Chair Mitchell. Let me pick up where Mr. Drack was. Mr. Walls, I believe, did you state your name for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Jason Walls, and I am the local government and community relations manager for the Asheville area for Duke Energy.
All right. How is the weather in Buncombe County today?
It is nice and cool. When we started the hearing, we were still in the 20s. I think we have warmed up to the upper 40s this morning, so it's nice and brisk.
All right. And what is your business address if you haven't given us that yet?
My business address is 555A Brevard Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806.
All right. Mr. Walls, you caused to be pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this case on November the 6th of approximately 9 pages. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you have any changes or corrections to your testimony?
I do not.
So if I were to ask you the same questions as contained in your pre-filed testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir.
Chair Mitchell, I would ask that Mr. Wall's pre-filed rebuttal testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
All right, hearing no objection to your motion, it'll be allowed.
Thank you. Mr. Walls, have you also prepared a summary of your rebuttal testimony?
Yes, sir.
Would you please give that to the commission at this time?
Good afternoon, Chairman Mitchell and commissioners. My testimony provides greater context for the WCMP and the Woodfin Solar Project specifically. As Duke Energy's Government and Community Relations Manager in the Asheville region, I am responsible for engaging with local leaders, customers, community and business groups, and advocacy organizations on all issues involving Duke Energy, including the WCMP. I have been involved with the WCMP community stakeholder engagement work since its inception. Since August of 2015 and throughout the WCMP, the company has had a deliberate, meaningful, and purposeful approach to community engagement, and through this engagement has been able to set in motion a comprehensive approach to ensure the continued reliability of service while seeking to align with the community's goals and desires. I can personally attest to the strong community interest in the successful development of the solar projects contemplated by the WCMP and the bedrock expectation that such solar projects were an integral part of the overall plan. I can also speak from firsthand experience in the community that the Woodfin Solar Project became a rallying point and a tangible sign of significant progress toward local renewable energy goals. There has been and continues to be overwhelming support for the Woodfin Solar Project from the environmental advocacy community, local elected leaders, and the community at large. The Commission has seen some of this from the many supportive statements filed in this docket. In my formal and informal conversations with local leaders, even those who would not put clean energy as their top issue, solar energy on top of a retired landfill simply makes sense. There are not many uses for the county's retired landfill, but a solar facility allows the entire community to benefit from clean energy. The Woodfin Solar Project has been cited locally as a win-win success story. The Asheville area has a passionate and informed citizenry who have long advocated for renewable energy and a commitment from Duke Energy for a smarter, cleaner energy future. I am proud that we have been able to collaboratively deliver on that promise with the Woodfin Solar Project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walls. I noted that earlier in looking at the participants in this hearing, there were several folks from Western North Carolina, including a representative of the Buncombe County Commissioners who were viewing this as participants. And so I wanted to thank you for collaborating with them and testifying today as to that partnership. With that, Chair Mitchell, Mr. Walls is available for cross-examination.
All right, Mr. Little, you may proceed.
The public staff has no questions for Mr. Walls.
Okay, we will take questions from commissioners. Commissioner Brown-Bland.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Gray.
No questions.
Commissioner Clodfelter.
No questions.
Commissioner Duffley.
No questions.
Commissioner Hughes. Okay, no questions from Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner McKissick.
No questions.
All right, Mr. Walls, you got off easily today. All right, you may step down and be excused, sir. At this point, it looks like we have come to the end of our hearing, and we will entertain post-hearing filings 30 days from the date of notice from the notice of the mailing of the transcript. Obviously, you all may submit them, as soon as you would like to. Any additional matters for my consideration before we adjourn?
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. None from DEP.
Okay.
The public staff, Your Honor.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your participation today and for being well prepared for today's hearing. With that, we will be adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.